Hi, my name is Lowell Joseph Gallen, and I would like to welcome our live studio audience and our viewers and listeners worldwide to this evening's program in our Root and Branch Association Limited English Language Conference and Lecture Series, now celebrating our 23rd year, held at the OU Israel Center in Jerusalem, Israel. Today is Wednesday, October 31st, 2018, the 22nd day of the Israelite month of Cheshvan 5779. Our speaker for this evening's program is Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz, a features writer for Breaking Israel News and author of Dolphins on the Moon. Other books as well, Adam?
The Hope Merchant.
A couple of novels that he has written. And may I say about the chef?
You can say
Okay,
whatever you want.
Adam is a Renaissance man who is a master of many trades, was a world-class chef in my hometown, New York City, a classical French chef at the top French restaurants for 10 years along the way before he found his way to the land of Israel. Adam lives in the liberated Israelite tribal territory of Gad, Manasseh. What's up there in the Golan?
I'm not really sure. I think it's Menashe. I know Menashe's up there.
Up there in the Golan, in the city of Katzrin, and he writes prolifically on the unfolding Geula end times process that many of us believe we are involved in now, and how it relates to current events. As a matter of fact, Adam has written over 2,000 articles already.
Almost 2,000.
Almost 2,000 for Breaking Israel News. I should say that we may the Lord comfort the victims' families of our brothers and sisters who were murdered in the mass murder attack on the synagogue in Pittsburgh on Shabbat. As some of you may know, when the murderer came in, fortunately, most of the people hadn't arrived. Unfortunately, for those who did arrive, they were the early birds, mostly older people who come earlier. And those were the ones who got slaughtered, including a 97-year-old lady. Downstairs at the same time, a gay couple, male, was having a brit for twin boys, and they were spared. There's no question, had the Rotseach, the murderer, got access to them, they would most likely be dead. President and Mrs. Trump were there today, I think, for a visit, a long visit invited by the rabbi. And it was also Parshat Lech Lecha or Vayera? Vayera, where among the subjects are the first brit of Abraham and the sacrifice of Isaac. And this was happening in the synagogue. As far as I know, in the 400 or 500 years of Jewish settlement in the Americas, which began with Jews fleeing Portugal, Portuguese occupied Brazil. It had been controlled by the Dutch, who had a religious tradition as Dutch Calvinists of some kind of religious freedom, tolerance, liberty. The Portuguese came in with the Portuguese equivalent of the Spanish Inquisition and said, you got to convert, you got to die, you got to go. And they got on a ship, as everybody knows the story. They arrived in New York, and Peter Stuyvesant didn't want to let him in. So Protexi had to be used with the Dutch East India Company, which had Jews on the boards, and they did let him in. Nothing like this has happened in 450 years of Jewish settlement in the United States. It never happened, but it just happened now. So we, as I said, send our condolences to the families and friends and the whole country. And I have to add a point about that. Someone wrote on the internet they wish the FBI success with their case. And I wrote to that person and said, no, it's your case. It's my case. It's every American's case. It's we the people's case. If I have to explain that to you, we have a big problem. It's your case. It's not a Jewish issue. It's everybody's issue in the whole world. Just like with the Rue Copernic bombing, when the French president said Jews and innocent Frenchmen were killed, as if Jews weren't innocent, they're not Frenchmen. These are not accidents, these Freudian slips. So we are with them. And now I want to introduce our program chair, Dr. Les Glassman, the program chair for the Root and Branch Association English Language Conference and Lecture Series, who will make some remarks before our speaker. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lowell, and welcome back. And it's good to have you back after the passing of your late father, and we wish you a Chaim Arukim, a long life, and you may be comforted. And it's just good to have you back here at the OU, the Root and Branch. I just want to mention something positive, which I heard today actually. It was going around on Facebook that one of the people that was murdered was a Holocaust survivor, and they said it actually wasn't a Holocaust survivor, but whatever. But what happened is that there actually was a Holocaust survivor that would go to the shul every day, and he was a little bit late, and he was driving in. Interesting that on Shabbat, but he was driving in, and they said, "You mustn't go. There's a shooting." And because he was a little bit late, it was a bit of a nace. It saved his life. So there are miracles, and we see the miracles, and our heart goes out to the whole community, to all of Am Yisrael. We should stand strong and just realize Am Yisrael Chai, and you feel the whole of Am Yisrael. We're all affected. So without further ado, I want to introduce our very special guest who's come all the way from Katzrin in Lokalan, Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz. It's an honor and a privilege to have you here this evening, and we really look forward to your talk this evening. So without any further ado, Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz.
I woke up shivering, feeling death touch my face like a chill breeze signaling the end of summer. The Talmud says that sleep is 1/60th of death, but lying in my bed waiting for the dawn made me want more than just a taste. Alone in the dark, drifting in the ocean between sleep and awareness, I was hidden from God's judgment, but not from my own lingering anger that lived in my subconscious. In that strange place, there was no God, no master above. But hell was a given, the bass note that rumbled beneath my existence. Satan was my God, but God was my master. There in the darkness, I was the master of the 11th light, reaping the sparks of holiness hidden in realities which should never have been. I doubted my own improbable existence, as it would appear once the sun arose. The one solid island in the vast ocean of realities was that I was a Jew. I was one of God's people, a cipher in the millions of souls that had served him, past, present, and future. One face in the faceless multitude that once stood at Sinai, suspended between the pain of my people's history and the brilliance of our prophetic destiny. My soul danced like a feather in a hurricane. I wanted more. I wanted to know who I was, to go back in time, to gaze again upon the things I had done, to see again the moments in my life that had made the angels scream. I lay in bed picking at the scabs of my soul. I was afraid to look, but since I refused to look away, the darkness peeled back my eyelids, forcing me to gaze upon all my past realities, true and imagined. I wanted to scream, to pray, to cry. I wanted to do anything but what I was doing, laying in bed, biding my time, praying against all hope that the sun would rise before my memory pulled me into a maze of self-doubt and self-loathing I would never escape. Thanksgiving, midnight, an empty highway, pushing the old BMW motorcycle until the engine screamed in pain that it could go no faster. and then twisting the throttle just a tiny bit more. I knew the speedometer topped out at 135, but I couldn't see it since the wind blasting up under my helmet made my eyes tear. Insanity nibbled at the edges of my vision as I knew that catastrophe was more likely than not. But this ridiculous speed had a built-in mercy. I would never know if I crashed. Touching anything, steering, brakes, or gears would mean flying out of control, turning myself into a red smear on the Garden State Parkway. How would I explain it to my parents, my desire to be so stupid as to kill myself just for a taste of speed? Silver dots suddenly appeared, floating in the darkness ahead of me. Deer had wandered onto the empty road, looking up in wide-eyed shock as the insane biker bore down on them, with death enough to go around. Did I die? I don't think so. At least, that's not how I remember it. A sick biker with no soul in his eyes handed me the patchwork sheets of paper. I searched his eyes for some clue of what kind of trip I was in for. Did he sell me some righteous acid, a trip to the stars? Or was it worthless bunk that would leave me waiting for a rush that never came? Maybe it was some weird chemical cocktail that would rip my mind apart, short-circuit me for the rest of my life. I sucked on the paper, dancing to the dead as I waited to find out. The alarm rang, pulling me up out of my past. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I took a deep breath. My eyes were swollen and my throat dry, but the real pain came from the edges of my soul, which felt ragged and raw. The feeling would pass with sunrise and coffee, but its effect would remain until well after noon. Stumbling towards the bathroom, I mumbled a blessing that did not contain God's name, a prayer to my pre-dawn deity, the God of the unclean. I needed prayer, lots of prayers, to make it through the day, this day, any day, to return to what I once was. That's the first couple paragraphs of a novel I'm working on right now. And it's very much, this is, God willing, going to be my third published novel. And it's a big step outside, and there are a lot of reasons for that I'd like to explain. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for coming. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity. You must be very special people, because I came all the way down here to see you, and I don't do that too often, so you all must be very special. So, as I said, I grew up in suburban New Jersey, and I went to Manhattan to learn how to be a chef, and I was there for 10 years, and I had a whole plan. My life was all planned out, and quite literally, I burned out. I mean, it's hard work, and it had totally encompassed me. I introduced myself as a chef before I gave my name. Adam was gone. All I was left with was a chef. And I remember I was working at Chanterelle, which is, at the time, was one of the top 2 French restaurants in Manhattan.
Could you speak just a little bit louder?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is this better? Okay. I was working at Chanterelle, which is one of the top 2 restaurants in Manhattan, one of the top 2 French restaurants. I'm going back 25, 30 years. And I got fired. I had never been fired in my life. I was the best chef around. And I needed to do some serious reassessing, so it was the summer and the Grateful Dead were on tour. So I went away for 2 months and took a lot of chemicals that Hashem didn't really intend for me to take. And they rewired my brain, gave me a vacation just long enough. And I realized that I had a really great plan for my life that someone else had thought up. And it had nothing to do with me or my happiness. The plan didn't come from me. So I said, from now on, I'm going to only do things that make me happy. And 3 months later, I was buying a ticket for Israel. It's a matter of to look down into the real source of your soul and to find out who you are is a very difficult thing that very, very few people actually do. And I merited that. And I moved to Israel. And I went to Kibbutz Eliyahu, and they said, "Hey, you're a chef? Great! We don't need a chef. we need someone to milk the cows. So to milk the cows. So I spent 5 years raising baby cows and reconnecting with nature, and it was very humbling because every morning I woke up and I'm like, I'm the chef, I'm this, I'm that. And then I'd go down to the dairy shed and there'd be a bunch of little baby cows going, meh. And I'm like, well, okay, I'm the guy who feeds the cows. And that's who I was. And I rewired myself again. And then at one point I decided I can't be religious anymore. Eliyahu was a religious kibbutz. So just before Passover, I left the kibbutz and I went to live in Jerusalem. And I remember I just couldn't go into a shul. I was like, God, I'm going to hide from you. So I walked to one minyan, didn't go in, walked to another minyan, didn't go in. I literally prayed in the bushes in front of a hotel because I was like Jonah in the belly of the whale. I wanted to hide. And a friend of mine walked past and he said, yo, dude, what are you doing there? Come up to my house, have a nice holiday meal. Oh, okay. So Hashem found me in the bushes. And little by little, I decided, well, if I can't hide from God, then I might as well get serious. So I went to Bahrain, and I learned in yeshiva, and I said, I'll stay there until I find my wife. And that took an awful lot longer than I thought it would. I don't know if I'm not the world's best looking guy, but I know a lot of other guys who are happily married. And it didn't happen for me. So I ended up staying in yeshiva for 8 or 9 years instead of the 6 months that I had thought I would be there. And stuff went into my head. And I would wake up in the morning and jump into a freezing cold spring. I would fast 2 days a week. I went to Uman 3 times to connect to Rebbe Nachman. I'm not a religious guy. I don't know why I did those things, but I did them for a really long time. And I did them with a lot of energy, and I don't know why. But little by little, it had an effect on me. And if I wanted to right now, I could not go back. I can't cook anymore. I don't know how to hold a knife. Things changed. Oh, and I should mention that when I was in Manhattan, my idea of fun was hanging out in biker bars, and I was very into motorcycles. So instead of motorcycles, I had a little bicycle that I would ride to the spring and jump in the water. So and after I got married, we moved up to the Golan. And what happened in the Golan was I figured, people eat everywhere. I've been all over the world. I've never had a problem getting a job. So I'll move to the Golan and get a job. I couldn't get a job. It was amazing. I was in Manhattan. I was young and single, meeting all these women, decide to do tshuva. Can't meet a woman. Worked my whole life since I was 14 years old. Go up to the Golan, can't get a job. Things were not logical anymore. Things didn't make sense. I couldn't get a job. So my wife said, look, if you're sitting at home, you love to write, do some writing. And I went online, and the only people who were paying to write were for steamy romance novels. And yes, there I was, sitting at my computer with long payas, and a long beard, writing steamy romance novels. Go figure. What's crazy, I was good at it. I was really cranking them out. I have like a dozen novels out there, and some people think that I'm a young Australian woman. Some people think I'm an older Canadian woman. I've got a lot of aliases out there, and a lot of novels out there. I also have a spy adventure novel that I wrote. I also ghostwrote an autobiography for a woman that I'm very proud of. But it was freelance. So little by little, I finally got a job writing news for a Brooklyn Haredi news service. So I was writing news, and I didn't like it. They weren't paying me. A lot of reasons I didn't like it. And then one day, a friend of a friend said, "How'd you like to try writing news articles for a different service?" I'm like, "I'd love to." So I went to meet with Naftuli Weiss, from Breaking Israel News, and he said to me, "Can you write about Geulah? Can you write about Mashiach? Can you write about the redemption?" And I was like, "Sure!" And I'm thinking to myself, no way. There's no way I could do it. I had no experience. I wasn't interested in it at all. I didn't like it. But I needed a job. So I said, "Sure, I'll do that." And my first article for him was about the Druze up north, and it didn't do very well. And my second article, I really tripped into the mud. Someone gave me a Saturday handout that had the group, the Sanhedrin, was putting the Pope and Obama on trial. And I'm reading and I'm thinking, Sanhedrin? Who are these guys? Putting the Pope and Obama on trial?
Good.
That article got about 250,000 views. And that was Hashem saying, "You're going to keep this job." Okay?
That's really good.
And people still remember the article. And the very nice thing about it is the Sanhedrin is now much more serious, much more well known, and they really have an impact. Whether you agree with them or disagree with them, thank God. So that's how I fell into writing that news. In the meantime, also my first book, The Hope Merchant, it's a very, very special book, was published around about the same time by a very dear man named Shimon Apostolf. And basically what happened was, through a friend of a friend, I had taken on myself that everyone I met, I would say, "I'm a writer." And one guy said, "Okay, give me your manuscript." And I did, and he gave it to his friend Shimon Apostolf, who was publishing his own book successfully. And Shimon left the manuscript lying around, and his wife read it. And as all great things in history happen, his wife said to him, "You're not doing anything until you publish this book." And he published my book. And it's a very, very special book. And I'll tell you why it's a special book, because everyone who's read the book, who's contacted me, is such a special person, and they have such an unusual take on the book. My favorite question is that people come up to me, "Oh, this was a great book." I'm like, "Really? Why?" Not because I want to know why I'm a great author, because I'm not, and we'll get to that. But the readers are amazing. They read these books and they're like, "Oh, I love the way you said this, this, and this." And I'm like, "I did?" I don't remember. Why? Because what is writing? At the risk of getting put away, or at the risk of getting a reputation for being a little bit not sane, writing for me is taking dictation. I hear voices. You really have to connect to your inner self. And when you do that, the writing comes. I mean, you have to work on the skill. I mean, thank God I've been writing. One of the benefits of 2,000 articles is every single day, twice a day, I have someone else telling me, "Oh, you silly guy, you used this word 4 times." And I had my second editor, Abra Foreman. She was harsh. She was, oh my gosh, was she tough. She would throw it right back at me, and she was not gentle. So I got better. But the important thing is to never lose that voice. And so therefore, one of the hardest things for a writer is editing. So what's editing for me? Editing is just my editor walking up to me saying, you see this sentence? You see this word? You could do better. So that voice has different levels. Getting the story down on paper is usually level 1. Editing is level 2. I've changed endings, I've changed the middles of story, I've changed the entire story. My wife will watch me, I'll be like walking down the street and I'll be like, she'll be like, you're writing a story, aren't you? And I'm like, yes, I am. Because the story comes to me. But the story comes to me level 1. And then I throw it to my editor, she throws it back at me, or he, actually it's a she. And then I have to go back and look for level 2. And that's what writing is for me. So when people come up to me and say, oh, you wrote such a great book, I'm like, sure I did. I had nothing to do with it. I showed up for work and the voices did the work. And that's writing. So I love, you know, I mean, you used to say, what do you want? Oh, I want to be a writer. I didn't want to be a writer. That's not really what I wanted. What I really wanted was I wanted to have readers. I wanted to have people come up to me and say, oh, it was amazing when you wrote this. And I'd be like, I did? Yes, of course I did. I love it. I love it. I wrote one book, but they read something else entirely. And I love the book that they read. I want to read that book. That's a much better book. So that's what being a writer became for me when I started having readers. It's enormous. It's enormous. I think that's true of every writer. You know, I mean, like sometimes I read, you know, I'll read a book and like, the better writers are better, and you'll read them and you'll be like, wow, I really, and then you're like, is that really what he intended? You know, and then you hear English teachers go into the novel and you're like, wow, I hope that's what he meant, because that makes him sound like a really great writer. So that's kind of like where I took my writing, and that's kind of like where I'm holding right now. Writing for Breaking Israel News was amazing because I wasn't interested in Geula or Mashiach or any of that. When I went to yeshiva, I was there for a long time. I loved Gemara. I loved Chumash and Rashi. I didn't like any of this special stuff. I certainly didn't like Kabbalah. Never touched it, never went near it. Never had any reason to talk about Mashiach. I was into fixing myself. I was into fixing my brain. And Gemara is great for that. So writing about Geula for me was like, I'd meet amazing people who were active in it. And I'd be like, show me something. Convince me that what you're doing is worthwhile. You say that you're doing this to bring Mashiach, prove it. And so far, 2,000 times they have. I've been convinced. I've been convinced of several things. I've been convinced that Mashiach is a very real thing. And over the course of the 4 years, I am totally convinced that things are moving forward in a way they never have before. And I'm saying this as a journalist, not as a Jew. Objectively speaking, things are getting stronger. My first article about Sanhedrin, I wrote it, they were about to disband. They'd been working for a dozen years to try to make it work. It didn't work. I wrote this article, 250,000 people read it. I had people calling me up, how dare you write about them? Who do they think they are? But you know something? A couple months ago, just before Rosh Hashanah, they had a concert. The president of Honduras, or the president of Honduras, and the president of Guatemala. You were at the concert?
I was there, and I videoed this, yeah.
Unbelievable.
Which concert?
The ambassadors.
They had a delegation from Mexico, an official delegation from Mexico, ambassador from Honduras, the president of Guatemala. I walked up to him, I said, dude, I actually called the president of Guatemala dude. I said, dude, what did you see that no one else saw? Why are you here and no one else is? What did you see? And he saw something, and he said, oh, he got it.
Can you explain what's Sanhedrin?
The Sanhedrin,
I
okay.
know what the original is.
Right. There's a group of rabbis who said, just a group of rabbis, and I mean, they're all serious. And they said, you know something? We have a biblical obligation to keep kosher. We have, and we do. And we've set up systems to keep kosher. We have a biblical obligation to keep Shabbos. We do. We have a biblical obligation to have a court system called the Sanhedrin. And we don't. How are we relating to that biblical obligation?
Because they don't have smicha.
Oh, we don't have smicha. Well, we've been told that smicha's gone and you can't get it back. And that is actually factually inaccurate, according to the Rambam. And they did a study in the Rambam and the Rambam writes about how to bring back smicha.
Yeshiva life really affected you.
Yeshiva life really affected me. I'm like, if I'm going to give up shrimp scampi, I want it to be real. Okay. What?
You said no at the beginning, but the way you're speaking.
Yes. Okay. I have to admit, you're right.
Napoleon wanted to re-establish the Sanhedrin.
I'm sorry?
Napoleon Bonaparte.
Right. I mean, the world wants us to reestablish. The world wants Jews to be Jews. They want us to be their representatives at Har Sinai. They want it.
It's true.
The Zionists said they hate us because of Torah. Biggest lie ever told.
Right.
Okay? The Sanhedrin, the first thing the Sanhedrin did.
Not all the Zionists. None of you.
Okay,
That's
not all.
generalization.
Okay. So the first thing the Sanhedrin did, by the way, I might end up not giving the speech that I thought I would give. Okay? The first thing the Sanhedrin did was to do a serious study about how to reestablish smicha. And they did a halachic study, and they saw that it's explicitly written in the Rambam. And we generally take the Rambam seriously.
Did everyone accept this? It would probably.
Who's everyone?
I don't know. Did
Everyone on the
everyone
Sanhedrin
know
did.
about this?
Everyone on the Sanhedrin accepted it.
There have been a lot of Rabbanim that have, and they have some that haven't.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I agree.
The big, right, okay.
You said there was a concert? What was the concert?
Okay, the concert, like I said, they were about to disband because they did this and they were actually some of the stuff they worked on people never heard about were amazing. They were talking about, there was a group of Chinese, a religion in China that was being horribly oppressed, and they came out with a declaration against that. Nothing to do with keeping kosher. The OU makes sure we eat kosher chickens. Everything else, they're not dealing with. Oops, sorry. Can't say anything bad about the people who are helping us out here. So they did a concert, and it was on the day that the Talmud says the world was created. And they said the entire world should be thankful for their creation. So what did they do? They had a concert, and they invited all of the nations, including Persia, also known as Iran. They sent out a proclamation in Arabic to invite all the nations to come and praise Hashem in Jerusalem. And the only three nations that answered the call were Honduras, Guatemala, and Mexico. But they answered. And they had this gorgeous concert where they had Kohanim, dressed as Kohanim, standing on the ramparts on the same level as the Beit HaMikdash, as the Temple Mount, in totally dressed as Kohanim, blowing shofarot with spotlights on them. If I see the Beit HaMikdash, if I'm Zoche, if I'm merit to see the Beit HaMikdash in my lifetime, it'll look like that. It was amazing. Now, the Sanhedrin that was about to break up, they're in negotiations now, talks with several South American countries that want them to come as the official Sanhedrin. And they want to sign on, and I read it and I couldn't believe it. Because every politician reads what he signs. They want to accompany Israel on our journey to building the third temple.
When were they considering breaking up?
About 4 years ago.
But not now.
Dude!
I thought it sounded like they were thinking of breaking up again.
Now, no. Now they are going to run for president. I don't know what they're going to do, but they're being taken. Next year, the concert is going to happen again next year, and it might actually be an official Israeli government thing.
And where is it going to be?
Well, it was at Davidson. It was at the southern wall of the Kotel. That's just one thing. The Sanhedrin, the most unlikely thing.
It was Mordechai Sobel. It was before he was Netta. He was the choir master. And then
Right.
it was before
Right.
Rosh
He,
Hashanah.
the conductor passed away 1 week after he, or 10 days after he,
There was a
Got
three
last
days.
to
concert.
do this before
And
that.
and there's so many. You have to.
So what's the connection between us and Hedron and a concert?
Because
They invited the world. It's, you know, I mean, if I tell you the stories.
It was amazing.
Okay. This is not the talk I was planning on giving. But what I did want to say, okay, so let me bring in the point that is connected to this that I wanted to make. My new novel that I'm working on now, that you just heard the first page of, is unlike the other ones. Mostly I write fantasy. A lot of people claim that the articles I write for Breaking Israel News are fantasy, but I don't. Okay? I actually think it's the only non-fake news out there today.
Okay, what do you write about?
I write about Geula.
What does that mean?
Right. Okay. So, what is writing about Geula? I have certain things I write about. Some are, I don't want to say some are more serious than others. There's some that's more entertaining, and other articles that I have a very real agenda. If I write about the Sanhedrin, it's because I want Israel to have a Sanhedrin. If I write about an earthquake in Iran that's divine retribution, it's okay if you tell me, come on, Eliyahu, get real. Okay, I'll agree with you. If you tell me about the Sanhedrin, come on, Eliyahu, get real, we're going to get into a big discussion there. I will not give any ground on that. It's a real thing. If I talk about the Temple Mount, that's another thing. Is the Geula happening? 4 years ago, Rabbi Yehuda Glick was shot. Okay? I was at his commemoration for his shooting a couple weeks ago. 4 years since he had been shot. He stood up there. And how did I write about it? They brought in a Sephardi singer, and at one point Rabbi Yehuda Glick grabbed the microphone and started singing and dancing with all the people. He's this beautifully sweet, gentle redhead. I mean, he's standing up there with this blazing head. And I'm thinking, when was the last time a red-headed leader of Israel was dancing because of the temple? That's David HaMelech. And what was he happy about? He said, when I was shot, maybe 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 Jews went up to the Temple Mount that year. Last year, almost 29,000 Jews went up to the Temple Mount. Between Rosh Hashanah and the end of Sukkot, 5,000 Jews went up to the Temple Mount. I went up for the, what? I'm sorry?
That's amazing.
And I went up. And first of all, when you went up 4 years ago, they used to scream at you. I went up. They took us up to the steps. I saw 5 guys line up at the steps, bow their heads, and stand there silently. And you know they were praying. Everyone knew they were praying. And there was nothing the Muslims could do about it. Nothing. There was recently discussion. If you go on, and it was Rabbi Yehuda Glick took it to the high court. By law, the Israeli government is required to enforce equality of religion. We are all supposed to be allowed to, but because of security consideration, okay? Now they're discussing, they're saying the reality on the ground has changed. There is no reason that if you have 5,000 Jews go up in that short period of time, if you have as many Jews going up to the Temple Mount as you have standing at the Kotel, well, Shachrit Milchamariv. That's changed. in 4 years since I started writing. That reality has changed. The Jews' attachment to the Temple Mount has changed. I went on Sukkot, I went down to Nisur Chamayim. I was standing there, walking along, right next to the Kohen Gadol, dressed as the Kohen Gadol, except he was wearing what are those the Australian boots? But he was wearing hiking boots. But he was the Kohen Gadol. And we went down to Shiloach, Silwan, and they had this gold utensil, this gold vessel that they filled up with water. How close are we? How much closer are we now than we were 5 years ago? That's what I write about. And the Sanhedrin, Rav Hillel, God bless him, Rav Hillel Weiss, he's restored my faith in Rebbeim, and I don't think he's even a rabbi. He sent me this photo.
Yes.
He is?
Yes.
He sent me a photo of him and a couple other rabbis sitting outside in this park with a telescope. I'm like, Rav Hillel, I write news. What is that? He said, well, we're going to fix the calendar. I said, what do you mean fix the calendar? He said, it was Rosh Chodesh yesterday. Did you go outside? Yeah. Did you see a moon? No. He said, the rabbis don't think that Israel sees the moon over their head. Chazal, when they set the Hillel Zaken, when he set the calendar, it was brilliant. No one knew astronomy like him. 2,000 years later, it's a little out of sync. We need to fix it. How did we used to fix it? We used to fix it with witnesses who went to the Sanhedrin. We're this close. We're this close to fixing the calendar. We could do it next month. That's one thing. The Jubilee. And this is a very difficult point. So if you get angry at me, you're totally justified. Was it 2 years ago? They started, the Sanhedrin started counting the Jubilee. And when Rav Hillel said to me, I said, Rav Hillel, Kavod Rav, you can't start counting the Jubilee until you have most of Israel, most of the nation of Israel inside Israel. And he said, we do. And I said, Kavod Rav, do the math.
You have to know the original count, no?
Well, Rav Hillel said it to me like this. First of all, there's a shita that 600,000 is enough, okay, to start counting the Jubilee, because that's the original 600,000 Jews who came in the time of Yehoshua ben Nun. He also said something that really shocked me. He said, most of Israel, most of the Klal Yisrael, most of the congregation of Israel is in Israel. If there's a Jew in Monsey, New York, he's chosen to be there. Okay? He's a Jew. He does mitzvahs. But there's a concept of Klal Yisrael. Are you inside or are you outside? Are you joining or are you not joining? By staying there, he has made a conscious decision. And there are implications if you make a decision. You don't want to be part of Israel in Israel. You want to be part of a minyan in Monsey. Fine. But that's your decision. At this time. And I was shocked. I was like, Rav Hillel, do you know what you're saying? He said, yes. Sweetest man you ever want to meet. Said the harshest thing I'd ever heard in my life. Okay? Things are changing. Things are moving forward. The old rules. I'll tell you another thing. I was in yeshiva for 9 years. I took a few tests. I was with a bunch of other guys who took a few tests. They know nothing, or very, very little, about Maaser, Bikurim, Tumen Tahara. They're not learning it. Why? This used to be everyday stuff. I have a lemon tree in my backyard in the Golan. I go up to a rabbi who's got smicha, he does weddings all the time. He gives, he stands up in front of the congregation on Saturday. Rabbi, what do I do with my lemons? I don't know. Our needs are changing. The reality is changing. We're moving forward. Now, this is what I wanted to say. Where's my book coming from? My book is coming from actually Ari Fulb, Zichrono Livracha, was killed. I'd had this idea percolating in my head. And I think the problem was, on social media you connect with people. I was connecting with people from Saudi Arabia, Muslims from Turkey, from all over. I'm open-minded, which is how so many weird things get into my head. But you talk to liberal Jews in America, and they think that people move to Gush Etzion. Why? Well, because we like having Palestinian children for breakfast. That's why we moved to Gush Etzion. The reality they believe in about Israel. I've heard the most horrifying things that don't even sound logical from very serious people. College professors, people on the news. What are they thinking? What do they think Israel is? So when Ari was killed, and that's a whole other thing. What amazed me was, I said I can't stay silent anymore. If you go in literature, in movies, Jews in Israel don't have a voice. We're not represented. No one sees us. And if they see us in the most horrible, lying ways. And I said, we need a voice. And I've spoken to, and I lived in Gush Etzion, in a place that was considered, Jewish terrorists only lived there, in Bahrain. I lived there for 15 years. Nothing could be further from the truth.
Can I just say something which I think is important to hear? There's a guy, Peter Baynard. He's on the CNN, he's quite prominent in the media. So he advocates to boycott anything over the green line.
And he's Jewish.
And he's Jewish. That means boycotting Yerushalayim, boycotting where you live, boycotting everywhere over the green line. And he's very prominent, and he's very left-wing, and he's becoming, unfortunately, a bit of the mainstream left-wing American discourse.
So what I wanted to tell Peter Baynard, what I wanted to tell every person in America through this novel, and sometimes the nicest way to get people to hear something is to tell it in a story. What I wanted to tell them is that every single Jew who has ever come to Israel moved here because of God. Doesn't matter if they're religious, doesn't matter if they went to yeshiva, doesn't matter if they had the kippah on their head, doesn't matter anything. Every single Jew who ever moved to Israel moved here because of God, because of what God told Abraham. And that message is being lost. And that's the message that I want to get out there. I want to look at them and say, look, I'm just like you. I was a chef. I was a biker. I was an idiot. I was a pig. I did this and that. And then I came here, and I'm just looking for Tati. I'm looking for my Abba. I'm looking for Hashem. That's all I'm doing. That's all you're doing. That's all you're doing. Everyone who has ever moved to Israel, religious or not religious. And that's the message we need to get out there.
First, you have to accept them before you can get the message out. And there are many people who don't accept what they are. There is a complete conflict about accepting every Jew.
Oh yeah.
No, not just here, all over the world.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult. And you're speaking to a woman who has 3 children here, and one in New York who was here, and one of my children, 2 of my children live way over the Green
I had a dear friend, his name is Ryan Belarus. He worked for B'nai B'rith in Canada. He's a, I forget I think it's Pati Indian. He's a native Canadian. Just like we have Native Americans, Indians. he was a native Canadian, and he started working for B'nai B'rith. His whole thing was indigenous. The Jews are indigenous to Israel. And he once turned to me, he said, I have never seen anything like it in any other nation, that they dislike each other so much they can't get along. And they'll even attack each other. And you're right. And it's only us. It's only us.
And you're also speaking to a woman whose grandson served in the Israeli army, traveled after the army, and was killed in India because he was a Jew. So I have to tell you, there's all kinds of Jews, and there's all kinds of ways to accept them. And if each one of us says that we will accept all Jews as Jews, life would be very different.
I mean, there's a beautiful Gemara that says the temple will come, and there won't even be standing room. We'll be packed in like sardines, and no one will complain.
Okay.
No one will complain. Bezrat Hashem.
Continue writing your books.
So
Thanks
what
so much.
happens in your latest book?
I tell the story. You wanna hear? that's the first chapter-ish.
You published already or not?
No, I'm still working on it. That's all I've got. Thanks very much. I guess I'm done.
I'm sorry.
No.
Well, I have a daughter from America who's leaving soon, and I have to get
Yeah. Why am I talking to the microphone? Like I said, you have to be a very special person to have showed up.
I have a daughter who's the seventh family on Malay Lavana, and the kid who was killed was the first baby born there.
Malay Lavona?
Uh-huh.
Oh, Vendel Jones's daughter lives on Malay Lavona. And she told me that she has hidden away in her basement several tons of incense from the temple that her Abba, Vendel Jones, found. Yeah, we got stories like this, literally.
Well,
Incense.
on
Tons
behalf
of
of the Root and Branch,
Big Matzliach,
Thanks so much.
we want to thank
Mr. Berkowitz.
Thanks so
Adam
much.
Eliyahu
This was a
Berkowitz.
lot more fun than I thought it would be.
We want to thank you for a very inspiring and a very, very informative and inspiring and a wonderful talk. I just want to mention something where you said that we're very close. About 2 years ago, I was at the Feast of Tabernacles. That's a lot of non-Jews who come to Jerusalem and they want to partake in the Feast of Tabernacles over the Festival of Sukkot. At the Pas Arena, which is one of the biggest stadiums here in Yerushalayim, they said, we've got a special event for you. I went, and on the bima, on the stage, was the Russian National Choir. And the conductor was from Moscow University, music department, and they played Yerushalayim Shel Zahav. And people in the audience were crying. It was emotional, it was amazing. Then they said, we've got something even better. They played Hatikva. I actually videoed it and it's on my YouTube. What's amazing is when they played Hatikva, I just thought while I was listening to Hatikva, if my great-great-grandmother in Lithuania would have been told that her great-grandson would be attending a concert, not only a concert, but the top Russian choir with the conductor from the Moscow University performing the national Jewish anthem in Jerusalem, they would have thought that you are meshuggah, you're crazy, and you're in a mental asylum. And we're seeing Gula. These are the times of redemption.
And we're seeing things that if you just write it down on paper, people are like. I once asked the people who were involved in the temple reenactments. I said, if I gave you the word right now, the only thing stopping Israel from going up and starting the sacrifices again, starting the temple service again, is the government. It's the only thing. So I asked them, is that really the only thing? And they said, that's the only thing. You have all the utensils.
We might not even have to do sacrifices.
Okay, so even if we don't, but to go up to the Temple Mount and start acting as Jews. So I said, if we wanted to go up right now, if I said to you, watch, the clock is running, right now start the temple service. How long? How long do you think it would take us to get everything together, to build a mizbech, to build an altar, to get the Kohanim dressed, to get the Kalim ready, to get up? How long would it take us?
The impossible takes a little longer.
3 hours. 3 hours. From the moment the word is given, we are 3 hours away from reinstating the temple service. They have the stones marked and numbered. Get a bunch of young guys, each one grabs a stone, starts running.
Well, can I just mention something in closing, and then I'd like to ask Lal to end off our talk. We told that in the times of the Mashiach that the whole world will know instantaneously when the Mashiach comes. Now, about 70, even 50, 40 years ago, people would think, how on earth could this be possible? And then at the same moment, everybody would know when the Mashiach would come. It's unbelievable. But today, we take it for granted. We have Facebook. We have, within a second, the whole world can know.
Do you know
So
there was an earthquake in South America, and the people in Central America, there was an earthquake in South America, the people in Central America heard about the earthquake on social media before the earthquake waves got to them. That's social media.
So we're seeing miracles, really miracles.
Dude.
I'd like to call on Noel to close our evening.
3
and
hours
thank you all very
away.
much.
3 hours away.
We want to thank Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz for his inspiring talk this evening, sharing with us text from his soon-to-be-published third novel, and a little bit from the almost 2,000 articles he has written for Breaking Israel News. As I told Adam, if I had all day, I'd read all your articles. I read as many as I can for a pep pill of inspiration. And we want to thank our program, Root and Branch Association program chair, doctor as a dentist, Les Glassman, originally from South Africa, for his introduction for Adam and Remarks. We thank our live studio audience for joining us this evening, and we thank our viewers and listeners wherever you may be. Again, it is Wednesday, November 31st, 2018. That's the Gregorian calendar. And it is the 22nd of Cheshvan, 5779, though we've heard from Adam that the dates may be changing a little bit when the Sanhedrin readjusts the calendar to synchronize with the moon. And I want to wish you all, since it's Wednesday evening, Shabbat is coming, a Shabbat Shalom from Jerusalem, Israel. We're looking forward to reading Parshat Chayei Sarah, and again we want to share our condolences with the families of the Jews who were massacred in the mass murder attack in Pittsburgh last Shabbat. So thank you very much to everyone, and we wish you a Shabbat Shalom from Jerusalem, Israel. Thank you for watching and listening and joining us in person.